When you're ready, Deborah.
Actually, I'm first.
Okay, then.
But it won't let me start the video. All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. The Sierra Club is one of the few environmental organizations that actually endorses candidates and works to help get them elected. We only endorse candidates after we have spent time reviewing their voting records, if they're an incumbent, or if they're not an incumbent or running for a different office. We send out questionnaires, we do interviews, and then and only then we make an endorsement. This is the fourth of 6 PAC fundraising events around the state for the North Carolina Sierra Club, and Josh has attended more than one, which we thank him for. And it's our goal to raise over $175,000 in PAC funds so that we have the funds to not only make direct contributions to our candidates in really tight races, but also have the ability to really hire organizers and mobilize our 100,000 members and supporters in North Carolina to help elect our candidates. We also tend to focus our efforts on the most competitive races in the state and the most competitive districts. I particularly want to thank our sponsors and each of you for your contributions. Without those, we wouldn't be able to do the work we want to do this fall. So it's very important. I'd like to turn it over now to Nicole Gaines, who's chair of our Piedmont Plateau group in the Greensboro area. Nicole?
Good evening, everyone. I am so thrilled. I am in Greensboro with the Piedmont Plateau group of the Sierra Club, and I want to welcome everyone on this panel. I'm ecstatic and just excited to meet everyone, and I can't wait to hear what we have to offer.
Thank you, Nicole. Next, I'd like to recognize Kathy Noble, a leader in our Foothills group in the Winston-Salem area.
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. And we have a good lineup of really strong candidates. Glad that so many could join us.
Okay. Next, I want to turn it over to our MC for this evening, Deborah Dimsky. Deborah, take it away.
Hello, good evening. I am Deborah, and I'll be introducing our candidates this evening. First up, we'd like to welcome Attorney General Josh Stein. He's the incumbent, and in addition to serving North Carolina as Attorney General, Josh worked for the Self-Help Credit Union and volunteered with Interact. He taught English and economics in Zimbabwe before earning his degrees from Harvard Law School and the Kennedy School of Government. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you, Deborah, very much. Appreciate that. Appreciate the invitation. Ken, always good to see you, my friend. How is life up your way?
Wonderful, wonderful. It's a little cooler than down your way. So we appreciate that here in the mountains of Western North Carolina.
Well, by definition, life is good up in the mountains.
It is.
Senator Garrett, great to see you, my friend. Appreciate all your good work. I see Jenna and so many other wonderful candidates and public officials. Is just great. We have such an incredible opportunity this election, just an incredible opportunity. In fact, few generations of people have as big an opportunity as you and I do in such a short period of time, 62 days, to make as big a long-term impact on the future of our state, our nation, and this world. I mean, really, we should look at this as a privilege, because the work we put in over the next 2 months will fundamentally affect this country. What kind of country are we? What kind of future do we have here in North Carolina? Are we ever going to tackle the crisis that is the climate crisis? This is all in front of us, and all we have to do is dig deep into our wallets and help organizations like the Sierra Club, which are so instrumental in trying to move this state forward, and support candidates like on this call, people who are putting themselves out there and busting their tails because of their love for North Carolina and their love of this nation. And so I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I want to thank you for all the incredible hard work that I know you're going to do over the next 2 months to make sure that this is the country that we want it to be. I wanted to talk a minute about some of the work we've been doing at the Department of Justice on the environment, because we do a lot of stuff at the AG's office. We're involved in criminal justice issues, of course, keeping people safe, eliminating the backlog of untested sexual assault kits, delivering justice for victims, and putting violent people behind prison, putting behind bars, rapists, and people who really are a threat to the public safety. Dealing with the opioid crisis, I'm leading the national negotiations of attorneys general, bipartisan group, every AG in the country, to hold the drug manufacturers and distributors that help to fuel this crisis accountable and make them pay to clean up the mess they created. Protecting vulnerable people, seniors, from robocallers, defending the Affordable Care Act in the United States Supreme Court, making sure that people who commit fraud on the taxpayer are held accountable so none of us pay more than our fair share. Defending fundamental rights, like rights to not be discriminated based on your sexuality, your gender identity, your race, your religion. Ensuring that folks have the right to vote and have their vote counted and mean something, and not discriminated against because of your partisan affiliation through partisan gerrymandering. These are all things that I've been working on over these last 3.5 years. But I want to emphasize the work tonight. Tonight, I want to emphasize the work that we've been doing to protect our environment. You know, the Constitution of North Carolina protects the environment, and my duty is to defend and uphold the state constitution. And so when we have an administration that is trying to actively undermine our government's most effective responses to the climate crisis, I am in court suing the EPA to defend the Clean Power Plan against the dirty power rule of the Trump administration. I am in the federal courts to defend the clean car standards and their fuel economy standards from the Trump administration's efforts to weaken those. Those are the government's two most effective responses to the climate crisis, and the Trump administration is trying to undermine those. I spoke out when the Trump administration withdrew from the Paris Climate Accords. I am fighting offshore drilling. Just last week, I sued the federal government, the Department of Commerce, over its decision to overturn the rejection by a state agency of a company's desire to engage in sonic boom testing in the seas, which will serve to hurt the fisheries, which are critical for our fisheries and tourism, and are a precursor to putting oil rigs off of the coast of the Outer Banks. And I will not abide that, so I'm in court fighting that. I am doing everything I can to make sure that the air that you and I breathe is clean. I sued the EPA over its weakening of protections against federal mercury and air toxin standards from emissions. I was suing the EPA. We threatened a lawsuit at the EPA over their dirty truck loophole, which would have dramatically worsened air pollution from trucking industry. And the EPA withdrew its proposal before we even went to court because they knew we were going to kick their tails. I'm all about making sure that the water that you and I drink is clean. I sued the Trump administration last month about the Clean Water Act to defend the waters of the US regulations. One thing we do is we issue environmental enhancement grants every year throughout Eastern North Carolina, $3.5 million, to try to improve water quality and ensure that there's not runoff and that the wetlands are protected and that we don't have terrible flooding in Eastern North Carolina. I believe in the principle that those who pollute should pay to clean up their pollution. And so on behalf of the Department of Environmental Quality, we negotiated consent judgments with Duke Energy over coal ash cleanup, 80 million tons of coal ash to be cleaned up here in North Carolina. On behalf of the Department of Environmental Quality, we negotiated a consent judgment with Chemours to ensure it cleans up the Gen X chemical in the Cape Fear River polluting southeastern North Carolina, and ensuring anyone whose well water is contaminated gets clean drinking water at home. I'm in the North Carolina Supreme Court on coal ash to make sure that Duke pays to do that cleanup and it's not put on your and my backs exclusively. I also just recently announced a statewide investigation into PFAS and other forever chemicals like this Gen X chemical, because it is all over this state. And the principle is clear. Those who pollute and damage the natural resources of North Carolina should pay to clean it up. You and I should not bear that liability. So as you can see, we've been doing a lot of work at the Attorney General's office to try to make sure that the incredible natural resources of this state, we live in one of the most beautiful states in the entire country. But if we're not vigilant, it will get dirtied, it will get sullied, it will get polluted. The health of the people will suffer. And I can't accept that. And as your Attorney General, I will fight it at every turn. I'm able to be Attorney General. You all will remember I won by a hair's breadth in 2016. I only won by a 0.5 percentage point. And so if Sierra Club hadn't been there and you all had not been working your membership and educating your voters, who knows if I would have won. And of course, you've been with me in every election I've ever had. I am so deeply appreciative of our longstanding partnership because of our shared commitment for keeping North Carolina beautiful and clean. And it's a pleasure to be with you all tonight. And I thank everybody watching. I thank all of you for your support of the Sierra Club, because when the Sierra Club has the resources, you're going to see and hear from all these incredible candidates tonight. And you're going to be as excited as I am about their serving us in the General Assembly and really making the state everything we want it to be. It's so good to be with you all tonight.
Thanks so much, Josh. If anyone has any questions for Josh, now would be the time to ask them, because he has other commitments for the evening. So do we have any questions? If so, speak up or put them in the Q&A. I have a question for you, Josh. What do you think is the number one most important environmental goal that we should really focus on to achieving in North Carolina this year? And, our number one priority.
Well, I think that, climate change is by far the most consequential crisis. And the ancillary benefit of attacking climate change is we would reduce air pollution that affects and impairs people's health, the respiratory and cleaning water, making sure people have clean drinking water, obviously also very critical. But there are policies that the legislature can adopt to accelerate the development of clean energy here in North Carolina. We've done a great job over the decades before the legislature switched to Republican to really set the solar industry up here. We're number 2 in the entire country in installed solar, and I think on a per capita basis, we're number 1. But other states are catching up. And so there's no such thing as resting on our laurels. And we have to continue to incent the development and distribution of solar. But we are woefully underutilizing the wind resources of North Carolina, both onshore and offshore. And the legislature shamefully passed an embargo, a moratorium on any wind development, just as $1 billion investment was about to be made in Eastern North Carolina. It just defies comprehension. And so there's a lot that the legislature can and must do when we get the right people there to accelerate the development of clean energy. And I think that's the top priority for us.
Thank you. Well, I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, so stay with us as long as you like, and we'll move to have a cordial welcome for Jenna Wadsworth. Jenna is a candidate for NC Commissioner of Agriculture. And Jenna is a record-breaking graduate of North Carolina State University. At the age of 21, Jenna became the youngest woman ever elected to public office in NC when she was elected to the Wake County Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Supervisors. If elected, Jenna will break another record of being the first LGBTQ constitutional officer in NC. Welcome, Jenna.
Thank you so much for that, Deborah. Hey, y'all. My name is Jenna Wadsworth, and I'm the Democratic nominee for North Carolina Commissioner of Agriculture. And it feels so good to be here with so many other amazing candidates, including A.G. Stein, and then Senator Garrett, and then, oh, my good friends Terry and Nicole and Dan Bessie and JD. Just some amazing, phenomenal candidates who are on our ballots this fall. And I just, I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Ken and then Rich and the Sierra Club as a whole, who have been so phenomenally supportive of me and my race, and who truly understand the opportunity that we have this fall when we pick up and we win the Commissioner of Agriculture's office. They were absolutely instrumental for me in the primary, especially in Western North Carolina, and I am just, my heart is so full in all the work that Sierra Club is doing every single day to protect our natural resources and engage in conservation. And that's something I understand quite a great deal about. So I grew up on a hog, cow, chicken, corn, cotton, tobacco, and soybean farm on a dirt road in Johnston County. So I'm an Eastern North Carolina girl. And some of my earliest memories are on the farm. I'm still very much engaged in agriculture to this day. This season alone, I planted over 45 rows of different fruits and vegetables. And for the last 10 years, I've actually been elected in Wake County, where I serve as vice chair of the Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Supervisors. And I'm really, really proud of the work that we have done there, because we saw roughly the same number of farmers today that we did when I first took office a decade ago, despite intense developmental pressures that we are facing in the Triangle. And part of that's because of the work that I have done to help our farmers transition to best management practices that allow them to put conservation first while still being economically profitable, giving them viable pathways to market, so that way farmers can continue doing what they love to do, which is farm, and help us put food on our tables and clothes on our backs. And not just that, we've made significant investments in environmental education programming in both our public and private schools, because I know that it's our children who have to live with the brunt of our inaction on climate change unless we begin to elect leaders who are unapologetic in addressing the climate crisis from day one, which is absolutely who I am. And so why am I running for Commissioner of Agriculture? Well, I'm running against a 15-year incumbent who has largely grown complacent in that time. He has been bought and paid for by special interests and international corporations like Smithfield Foods, other factory farming organizations, as well as big chemical, big oil and gas. All of these organizations, a lot of them out-of-state interest, who pollute our natural resources and damage our environment, and largely suffer none of the consequences for doing so. And I am committed to not taking any corporate PAC money this cycle. I am not going to let these out-of-state corporations set the priorities in your North Carolina Department of Agriculture. And to this day, I am still the only statewide candidate of either party who has signed the No Fossil Fuels Pledge, agreeing to take no money from fossil fuel or big energy companies or their executives. I'm also the only candidate to this date who has signed the pledge to support the Green New Deal. And that's because I know that climate change is real, even if my opponent does not. Yes, it is 2020, and I'm running against someone who does not believe that climate change is real. And y'all, I believe that is a dereliction of duty on his part. Farmers in particular really are the ones who are suffering the brunt of his inaction in recognizing this great threat to their livelihoods and well-being. Most farmers, and I know a lot of folks say, well, what about more conservative farmers who maybe are a little nervous about using the terminology climate change? Well, I will tell you, whether I'm talking to a Democrat or a Republican or an independent across this state, a lot of these farmers know that something is happening. They know that there is a threat to their bottom line that they are facing. Their planting seasons aren't the same. Their yields and harvest aren't the same. And that's on top of how hard their job already is. And being a farmer is one of the hardest jobs there is. And you're working long hours with a lot of overhead and very little profit margin. And so on top of that, and every trade war that we seem to be getting into, and double-digit drops in the commodity market, which is happening especially in light of COVID-19, it's becoming very hard to do what they do. And so more of them are having to sell out to these concentrated animal feeding operations, these factory farming companies, because they just can't support doing what they love to do anymore. And that's unacceptable, and that's unsustainable to me. And they deserve better. Our children deserve better. And they absolutely can have better come this fall. Now, I'm running against someone who thinks that after the last major storm events that farmers suffered, he hailed himself as a hero for getting Democrats and Republicans in the legislature to agree to cut relief checks to them. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I think that writing a relief check can't be our only solution to dealing with a natural disaster. And that's why I'm committed to, once I take this office, creating a division within the North Carolina Department of Agriculture that specifically works to address climate change and to build sustainability and resiliency into both our farm plans and our community plans. This is really where we need to go. This is the future, and the future is now. So how do we talk about minority farmers who have been incredibly discriminated against by many agricultural operations at the federal level and the state level for years? Black farmers having 1/10 of the land now that they did a century ago. And out of the 49,500 farms in North Carolina, only roughly 2,000 are owned by minority farmers. How do we give them an opportunity to succeed? How do we give female farmers and LGBT farmers and urban farmers in our urban areas and urban centers like the Triad the opportunity to succeed? Well, that means looking at sustainability. That means looking at regenerative ag, community gardens. And I want to put a garden on every school ground too, y'all, because we're going to address food insecurity through this office. We're going to talk about renewable energy like wind and solar. A lot of farmers depend on leases like that in order to have the opportunity to continue to keep their land in their family while the next generation is making a decision about whether or not they want to engage in this practice. There are so many things that we can do, but I need your help to make it possible. We have seen people out on the coast, our fishermen and women that don't know what their future looks like because of climate change, because of all these big storm events and changing currents. I have talked to apple orchard owners up in the mountains who they can't even get crop insurance anymore because blooming seasons are unpredictable, again, because of climate change. So it is absolutely critical that we elect someone to lead our state's biggest and most economically profitable industry, agriculture contributing something like $92.7 billion per year to the North Carolina economy and employing over 770,000 people. It is absolutely critical that we have someone leading our state's biggest and most important industry who shares our values and priorities. And addressing climate change and building a sustainable, more equal, more just future is absolutely what I'm committed to doing. So again, my name is Jenna Wadsworth. I'm so grateful to have the support of the Sierra Club in my race, and now I hope to have each and every single one of y'all's.
Thank you so much, Jenna. We certainly look forward to the race and wish you the best. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to welcome Judge Laura Cubbage, who is running for NC Court of Appeals. Laura has served as Assistant District Attorney, Assistant Attorney General, District Court Judge, and Superior Court Judge in Guilford County, and is ready for the challenge of serving on the NC Court of Appeals. Laura has pledged to bring her integrity, fairness, competence, and respect of the bench to the Court of Appeals, and feels it's important to continue to diversify our state government. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you. I kid you not. A knot got in my stomach because I said, she's going to call on me after Jenna. How do you follow up after Jenna with all her energy? I am not going to be able to do you any justice, Jenna. You know, I love to hear when she talks because she has so much energy. She has such a bright vision for our future. And we here in Guilford County, we are rooting for you and pulling for you every step of the way. So we're fighting with you. But to the Sierra Club, thank you so much for having me this evening. To Ken and everyone, Senator Garrett, I haven't seen you in such a while, but it's so good to see you here, and Nicole, as well as Nicole Quick, as well as Nicole Gaines. So everyone that's on here. As Deborah said, I am Superior Court Judge Laura Christine Cubbage, and I always give my full name because that's the name you're going to see on the ballot when you start voting, and I don't want anyone to miss it. I am currently serving North Carolina as a Superior Court Judge, which is the highest trial court judge in our state, and I am running for the second highest appellate court in our state, which is the Court of Appeals. I am running for seat number 5. I do have an opponent, and we're probably going to have a really tight race. As you all know, here in North Carolina, all things are tight in North Carolina, but I could not agree with Attorney General Stein that we have the opportunity this year to do some really big things in North Carolina, and it will affect generations to come. And one of the things that I'm really hoping for, and actually if there's a blessing or silver lining around this COVID pandemic, as far as the judicial branch goes, we have started integrating a new update technology system so that we can live stream hearings and trials. And our Court of Appeals is now live streaming oral arguments. Our Supreme Court is now live streaming their oral arguments. And starting actually next Tuesday in Superior Court, as far as our civil matters, all motions we will be doing via WebEx. And if someone wants their trial, bench trial via WebEx, of course, we'll be doing that too. We are not right now doing jury trials. But one thing I'm also hoping to see happen is right now in our judicial system, we have some issues with public trust. And so thankful that we have our Chief Justice Sherry Beasley, who was appointed back in March, that has been implementing policies and procedures to make sure that our voting citizens and our citizens that utilize our judicial branch make sure that they don't feel like there's two justice systems. And so we have a heavy concentration on equal justice, equal access to justice, and transparency. With that being said, I could never sit on here and tell you guys exactly how I would rule on any issues, but what I can tell you is that you need common sense and independent judges that understand that climate change is real, for starters, understand the issues that come about when we have our issues with our climate. And, you know, those issues also affect our access to justice. Because if you don't have good drinking water, that's going to cause issues, and that's going to cause issues in every area of your life, which eventually is going to lead to the courtroom. And those are things that a lot of people don't think about, that just about everything that we will encounter in life at some point or time is going to become an issue that lands on the bench of a judge. And we need to have judges, not judges that will go in and rubber stamp everything our legislative or our executive branch does, but judges that will sit down and thoroughly think through these cases and understand that there is a practical side to it as well as a theoretical side. Not judges that can get on things like this and you know, and possibly give fancy speeches or our perfected 3-minute stump speech that we all have as candidates, but judges that you can actually look back over the years and say, that is a judge that cares about the issues and concerns that come before them and care about the litigants that come before them. Because if we don't have healthy litigants out in our society, you can best believe that at some point in time, they're going to visit me. And it's not going to be a good outcome for them. And so guys, when you vote, not just vote for me, I humbly and respectfully ask for your vote, but I ask you also to look at the whole judicial slate of judges, of our Democratic judges. I can tell you that hands down, we have the most experienced slate. We have the most dynamic and diverse slate, not just diversity of race, but diversity of expertise in the areas of law that we practice and have practiced. We have the most experience in our collaborative number of years that we have been serving in the legal field. And I believe that each one of us, from our Supreme Court candidates to our Court of Appeals candidates, are the common sense judges who vow to remain independent and not try to promote any agenda of any person, agency, or branch of government, and will decide the cases that come before us based on the rule of law, based on the North Carolina and U.S. Constitution, and based on justice. So again, Sierra Club, I thank you for having me. And I look forward to hearing from the rest of the dynamic speakers, and for all of you out there that support the Sierra Club, and in turn you support all of us candidates that support the Sierra Club. We are grateful and we thank you. And again, we look forward to crossing each and every one of us to crossing the victory line with you guys come November the 3rd. Thank you.
And thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And we appreciate you. Thank you. And next, I would like to welcome Terry LeGrand to our panel. Terry is running for NC Senate 31. And Terry's a Wake Forest University School of Law graduate who's been a major contributor to Winston-Salem culture. She's been an advocate for women, children, and families, at-risk youth, and helping students financially
think Deborah froze.
Uh-oh, Deborah froze.
Shall I hop in? Oh,
Okay,
there she
Deborah,
is.
you okay? You froze for a second, Deborah. Go ahead and repeat what you said.
Oh, I froze? Okay.
Just review, yeah.
So welcome, Terry. Terry's a Wake Forest University School of Law graduate who's been a major contributor to Winston-Salem culture. She's been an advocate for women, children, and families, at-risk youth, and helping students finance their educations. Terry co-founded the Piedmont Earth Day Fair and the Piedmont Environmental Alliance, which how could we do without both of those? Thank you, Terry. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I appreciate it. So yes, I did go to law school at Wake Forest University. So now you've heard it 3 times, you won't forget. But I am thrilled to be here tonight and really appreciate the Sierra Club. I was trying to think back. I know that I was in college when I joined my first environmental organization. I think it was the National Wildlife Federation though. So I can't say Sierra Club was first, but I'm pretty sure it was the second one I joined. And I've been a member for a very long time, and I'm just really grateful to the Sierra Club for all of the advocacy work that they do and lead across our state and across our nation. So I'm very honored to be here, honored to have the endorsement of the Sierra Club. And as Deborah said, I have, I first came here to Winston-Salem to go to law school at Wake Forest, and I have been advocating for women, children, and families for my entire career. And the one piece of information that Deborah left off is that after I ran for the NC House in 2018 and was unsuccessful in that bid, I was looking around for what my next project would be. And so in March of 2019, I went down to Atlanta and was trained by Al Gore with the Climate Reality Project and spent the rest of 2019 going around the community and giving Climate Reality Project presentations, the slideshow, to basically anybody that would listen. So I feel like I have pretty good environmental bona fides, and am very much looking forward to going to Raleigh and working very hard to bring forward an agenda that recognizes climate change and all of the other environmental challenges that we have as a result of the leadership that is in Raleigh right now. So I do want to tell you a little bit about Senate District 31. It is a brand new district. It was redrawn by court order on October 28th. That order was made final, and so I was able to file to run for Senate District 31. It is Eastern Forsyth County, all of Davie County, and Southeast Winston-Salem. It has been identified as one of the most critical districts in our state to flip the Senate in 2020. Me, JD, we have to win our seats in order to flip the Senate, and Michael has to keep his seat. But what happens if we can flip the NC Senate is that we can start addressing climate change. We can start making sure that we are cleaning up the water and getting these toxic chemicals out of our water. We can pass a real farm bill that holds big ag accountable and makes, as Josh Stein said, the corporate polluters clean up their messes. So if we want to tackle all of these things, the only way we get that is by sending Phil Berger to the back row. And the only way we do that is by flipping the North Carolina Senate. So that's why I'm running, and that's what I'm working my heart out every single day to do, is to help flip the North Carolina Senate by winning Senate District 31. When we win Senate District 31, when we flip the NC Senate and send Phil Berger back to the back row, then we can really start focusing policy in this state back on working families and on cleaning up our environment and making sure that we're protecting it for future generations. So I appreciate your support. Happy to be here. Love listening to Jenna, love listening to Lauren, look forward to listening to everybody else. And I'm ready to get to work on day one in January 2021 in Raleigh, and we'll appreciate your support helping me get there.
Well, thank you so much, Terry. And we really appreciate your participation, and we appreciate all that you're doing to try to get there. I know it's hard work. And next, we'd like to welcome JD Wooten for NC Senate 24. JD is a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy and served as U.S. Air Force officer and engineer. JD also served as the Commander's Action Officer and as officer in charge of the Patriot Honor Guard. Following his active duty, he attended Wake Forest University School of Law and is currently attorney with a local law office. Welcome, JD.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for your support and for being here, and to the fellow candidates for participating tonight. Especially Terry, my fellow Wake Forest law grad. You know, we're going to flip this Senate, and we're also going to do some good things for Wake Forest law at the same time in the press. I think it's like was said, I am JD Wooten. I am the Democratic nominee for District 24, which is Eastern Guilford and Alamance. You know, we are on the 40 corridor. And I think that what you're going to see is that in every statewide race and in every local legislative race, the 40 corridor is pivotal to how North Carolina is going to perform this year. It goes right across over in Forsyth, and of course everyone knows where 40 is in the state, but that corridor right between the Triad and the Triangle is particularly important. This is my second time running for the seat. We came up just short in 2018. But my opponent, Rick Gunn, has decided to retire. And that was the 2018 opponent. So it's now an open seat. And that really helps us a lot, plus the name recognition and the support and momentum we built. And we were able to show people in 2018 through the hard work that everyone did and rallying in the community that this really is a district where we can make a difference. So, you know, Terry suggested it. I'll outright say it, and I'll let Senator Garrett confirm it at some point. If the election were held today, we'd take 26 of the 50 seats based on our polling, and Terry and I are in that, and we've got to stay that way. And the way we stay that way is to keep getting our message out, because what we're also seeing in every single one of those polls is that North Carolina wants change. The hardworking people of North Carolina feel like they've been left behind, and they've been done a disservice, and it goes up and down the board across the spectrum from issues, whether it be environmental impacts, having to pay for the environmental degradation and deregulation that's gone on, the tax cuts that are impacting, the tax cuts for the wealthy that are disproportionately impacting all kinds of communities that really need our help, not our hindrance. And even such common sense things as expanding Medicaid. We have to put Phil Berger in the back row if we want to have a chance of doing any of this. Somebody mentored me very early in this process that the single most important vote I will take as a freshman senator is that very first vote for who the Senate Pro Tem is. If I get elected in this district, it will not be a vote for Phil Berger. And that is what this seat is all about. And by doing that, we can fight for all of these policies that everyone on this call supports and that we're all hopeful for the future of North Carolina, so that we can restore North Carolina to a legacy of a state that takes care of its people and that looks after its people. You know, a somewhat progressive beacon of light in the South. You know, we were never quite the progressive beacon that other states were, but compared to our southern neighbors, we certainly stood out until about a decade ago. And that's a big part of why I chose to run. When I graduated high school from Raleigh, in Raleigh, I went off to join the Air Force, and I served on active duty for about a decade. And that happened to coincide with my return home, coincided with the Republican takeover and change of this state. I didn't recognize the state when I came home after a decade of service. And I am going to fight tooth and nail with everything I've got, no matter what they want to do or say about me or anything I stand for. We're going to fight with everything we've got to try and put this state back on track to being the state that my family has known and loved for well over 20 generations. And we can't do it alone. Thank you so much for everyone's support. And we look forward to taking the majority come this January.
Well, we sure appreciate you, JD. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And I now would like to welcome Michael Garrett, the incumbent in Senate 27. Michael is a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and is managing partner of a local marketing firm. Michael defeated Trudy Wade in 2016, but of course, it's still going to be a competitive fight. Yes, congratulations, Michael, and welcome.
Well, thank you, Deborah, and thank you to the Sierra Club for having me tonight. It's truly an honor to be with you all. And hello to Jenna and Dan and Nicole and Terry and JD and Judge Cubbage. It's good to see you all. Our family's been going through a lot, so I have not been on the campaign trail as much. So it's good to see friendly faces. I just want to start with thanking the Sierra Club for everything that you all did in 2018. 2018 was a turning point for North Carolina. It's because of the Sierra Club and your members that we broke the supermajority in both the House and the Senate, which made sure that Governor Cooper's veto actually meant something. And I can't tell you how critical that was to changing the direction of North Carolina. In 2018, I got elected to the state Senate, and I was optimistic, hopeful, naive. It was Mr. Smith goes to Washington. We're going to talk to Republicans and persuade them that, our way is the right way, that clean air and clean water is good for our families. It's good for our children, and it's good for the economy. And I'll tell you, I'm just not as persuasive as I thought I was. You just can't change their hearts and minds by debate, because we don't have debate in Raleigh, because especially in the Senate, one man controls the show. And there's really only one way to truly change the direction of this state in a meaningful way. When I went to Raleigh and I had all these hopes and aspirations, what I quickly found out is when you sit in the back row, you can file great bills like polluter pay, like I filed, or banning PFAS and fire foam because of what it's done to the drinking supply here in Greensboro. But if you're on the back row, your bills aren't going to get very far. You're going to get to press the red button a lot, but rarely are you going to get to press the green button. And it is because of the candidates on this call tonight that I know, I am hopeful, I am confident that when we return to Raleigh in January, we're going to have new leadership in the State House. We're going to have new leadership in the State Senate. We're going to have a progressive court. We're going to have a progressive champion in our new Commissioner of Agriculture. And in North Carolina, we're going to be able to pass meaningful legislation that is going to make North Carolina a beacon in the South once again, but not just a beacon in the South, but a beacon in this country for what it is when you have progressive environmental policy enacted, how we can turn back the tide that this Republican-controlled General Assembly has undermined the environmental protections across this state. So, I want to say thank you to the Sierra Club, because I know my race was decided by 1 percentage point. And it was the advocacy, the door knocking, and the phone calls of your members that put us over the top. And it is because of this organization that we broke the supermajority in the North Carolina Senate and in the North Carolina House, while we've been able to stop some really regressive policy proposals this session by this General Assembly. But I am ready not just to stop bad ideas, but I am ready to enact good ideas, which is what we're going to do when we return to Raleigh in January. Because I think that all North Carolinians are environmental voters, because when we used to be able to do these things in person, and I would talk about environmental policy and why, and the legislation that I have passed as Guilford County, that I have filed as Guilford County State Senator. And I said, you know, I think every voter is an environmental voter, because if you're in this room, raise your hand if you breathe air. And pretty much everybody will raise their hand. I say, okay, maybe you don't breathe air. Well, raise your hand if you drink water. You get everybody on that one. And so the environmental issues are critical to the people of North Carolina, to all the people of North Carolina, from Murphy to Manteo. So I know when we have a new progressive General Assembly, we can get things done, and we can make sure that the environment is protected, not only for ourselves, because climate change is not a next generation question. Climate change is a now question. But we can do things for our children and for our grandchildren when we do the hard work, we make the phone calls, and we get these candidates elected. And I will be there every step of the way with every single one of them to make sure that in January 2020, it's a new day for North Carolina. So thank you to the Sierra Club, and thank you to all the candidates and your members for everything you're doing to make sure that North Carolina is a place that we are proud to call home. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And next, I would like to make a very warm Foothills welcome and Piedmont Plateau to Dan Bessie, who is in competition for NC House 74. Dan's a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and the UNC School of Law. He served as a legal aid attorney before being elected to the Winston-Salem City Council almost 20 years ago, where he's been especially focused on transportation, safety, affordable housing, and building a welcoming community. Dan served on the NC Environmental Management Commission and the NC Coastal Resources Commission in efforts to protect clean air, water, and land. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much, Deborah. It is a pleasure to be here today. There we go. It's a pleasure to be here today and have a chance to talk with you. I also want to thank the Sierra Club for your support, for your endorsement, and for inviting me here this evening to speak briefly with all these fine folks. I do have to say one thing about the Sierra Club's lineup, though. You make me jealous when you feature great candidates like Terry, JD, and Michael, who are running for the Senate, because they have this deliciously awful supervillain to point to in Phil Berger. And Nicole and I just don't have someone with the same level of, ugliness to say we're going to get rid of this person.
Oh, no.
But that's okay.
That's
okay, because we understand, all of us understand, particularly folks on the panel here, that democracy is a team activity. And that in order to, as Michael said, in order to start moving our state forward again, not just block the bad stuff, but get us moving forward again, we have to take the majorities. We have to do it in the Senate, and we have to do it in the House. And Nicole and I are going to be part of the team that makes that transition in the House. I think that she and I have the distinction of being two of the 3 seats in North Carolina that have been called the pivotal seats this year for control of the North Carolina House of Representatives next year. We are in the seats that if we win them, it is almost certain that a majority of the North Carolina House are going to be pro-environment, and we're going to have an opportunity to move forward again. As Deborah said, I am running in Forsyth County for the newly drawn House District 74. It's in western and southwestern Forsyth County. This is also one of the seats that was redrawn by the North Carolina Supreme Court order last fall to make it a more competitive seat, much more competitive. And so we have a chance to really flip it. Just a little bit about my personal background. You'll hear me talk a lot this campaign about education and healthcare and human and civil rights and jobs, all critical issues that are important to the families of our state. But the truth is that the first thing that got me involved in public policy was the environment. It was clean air, clean water, and the green land. I remember when I was a kid, growing up in a neighborhood where we all loved to go and play in the woods near our houses. And we loved to go down and play in the creeks. But there were some funny things about the biggest creek in the neighborhood, that it would change color from day to day and week to week. It wasn't until a couple of us tracked down where the colors were coming from that we realized why the creek would sometimes be clear, sometimes be brown, sometimes green, and once in a while it would be purple. And it all depended on what the upstream hosiery mill was dyeing the socks that week. And we figured out where to report the problem. We reported it to the right public authorities, and they came out and saw that it was fixed. And this was before the Clean Water Act was even adopted. There was a connection between where we lived and what we could do as citizens, even as kids, and fix problems. And I carried that lesson with me through my life. Carried it to law school, carried it after law school when I spent a decade working as a legal aid attorney for poor families in coastal North Carolina counties. And it was there that I started understanding the intersections between the environment and poverty, between the environment and race. I saw neighborhoods that lived downstream from chicken processing plants, where depending on the surge of waste out of the plant at the end of the shift, they may have manhole covers blasting up with chicken guts into their backyard, or they might have it blasting up through their toilets. Those were poor neighborhoods. They were black neighborhoods. I saw the problems in the coast where folks who were working in the fish houses, working in the crab houses, were dealing not just with the environmental problems, but they were dealing with the workplace safety and health problems. I had the opportunity to serve on bodies like the Coastal Resources Commission and later the Environmental Management Commission, where we saw the complex interaction of environmental issues at the state, federal, and local levels. And we saw that we could only be as strong as the federal laws let us. The local initiatives could only be as strong as the state laws let us. And, as Michael said, at one point we were a beacon for the Southeast on a number of things, including our environmental laws. I helped write in the 1990s what was then the strongest wetlands protection state laws in the Southeast. They've been gutted since then by this, pack of fools running Raleigh that don't understand that the long-term survival of the people of our state depends on clean water. I remember when then Attorney General Roy Cooper helped fight through, well, actually he was in the state Senate, folks, and then he helped implement the Clean Smokestacks Act. I was on the Environmental Management Commission when we wrote the rules that implemented that. We saw what a difference it made, and we've seen the regression that has happened since the pack of fools running the state legislature now came into power in 2010. So we've got to take back both houses. We've got to do it as a team effort. Every one of the candidates on this Zoom call needs to win, and we can all win with your continued support. And we look for it. We look for a chance to not just recover the ground that we lost in the 2010 decade, but to move forward and address the problems that we were beginning to get to, the climate crisis, forever chemicals, long-term toxins in our waters, the fact that we still have people who are fighting off pollution from poultry and meat processing plants and fighting for their health working inside the plants. We can address those problems. We need the majorities to do it, thank you for the chance to come and talk with you this evening. And I'll shut up and let Nicole go now. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dan. We really appreciate all the hard work that you do, and just your body of work is amazing. And thank you. And next, I want to give a very warm welcome to Nicole Quick, who's our NC House 59 candidate. Nicole is a graduate of St. Andrews Presbyterian College and the University of South Carolina. Nicole has a background in textiles and furniture and served as chair of the Guilford County Democratic Party. Nicole has more recently been involved with learning about occupational therapy and focusing on volunteering in schools. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you, Deborah. And thank you to the Sierra Club for your endorsement and support, and to everyone who's here tonight. I have to say that I'm rethinking coming last in this lineup, because this is an amazing slate of candidates, and I'm just honored to be here among them. I'm hoping that I get to work with all of them in Raleigh next year. So the question I get asked most often since I filed to run for this seat is, why are you running? And that's an important question for any candidate. You want to know why candidates are doing it. My short answer is my son, Tad. He is gifted, but he also has autism. And when he was getting ready to go to 3rd grade, we learned that the EC teacher, the special needs teacher here in our district school, had been laid off. That was in 2013. That summer, this legislature had made dramatic cuts to the education budget, and just in Guilford County, we laid off 37 teachers, and one of those was the special needs teacher at our district school. I was fortunate that I was able to keep him home and homeschool him for 2 years, because I knew if I sent him to school, he wasn't going to have the supports he needed to thrive there. After 2 years, he went on to Lincoln Academy for middle school. Fantastic school. He had all the supports he needed. He had an EC teacher, speech therapist, great administrators and counselors. What they didn't have for 2 years was working air conditioner on the 2nd floor. So the teachers would have to take the students outside when it got hot. And they also didn't have a math teacher the first semester of his 6th grade year. She left at the beginning of the year and went to Virginia, where she could get paid a decent wage, and they couldn't replace her for a whole semester. So they had substitutes filling in. Now, what I learned was that our experiences were not unique to us. This was happening all across North Carolina. And our kids deserve better. They are our future, and we need to invest in education and make North Carolina an education state again, because that is where our future lies. That is our economic future, and it's the right thing to do. Now, I'm not just worried about our children's schools, though. I'm worried about the environment we're leaving them. When I was growing up, I grew up on 8 by 5 mile lake, Lake Waccamaw in southeastern North Carolina. I was in the water all summer, every summer. My father and I clammed and fished in the waterways at Holden Beach. My family camped and rafted in the Nottahala up around Bryson City and Cherokee. And this state has so much to offer. And we need to take care of all of those resources for the next generation. You know, my first experience in politics, I worked for my congressman in DC, and the first project he gave me was to get the very first recycling center open in Brunswick County. And since then, I have become more and more aware of how valuable our environment is and how important it is to preserve it. Today, we have to worry about the level of coal ash in the water, the PFAS contamination. We have to worry about danger and destruction from extreme weather events because of climate change. And in some parts of the states, residents even have to worry about breathing in pig feces in the air by factory farms. Again, our kids deserve better. We all deserve better. We should not be putting corporate profits above environment and above our health. My opponent I know that Dan said he's not such a bad guy, but John Hardister takes half of his campaign donations from corporate PACs. His biggest donor is Duke Energy. And then what does he turn around and do? He votes to allow them to give rate hikes to North Carolinians so that they can maintain a 10% profit margin and we can pay for their coal ash cleanup. I'm not going to do that. We're going to hold polluters accountable. We're going to set higher regulations. And when they break those regulations, they're going to have to fix it and pay for it themselves, not everyday working class families and North Carolinians. So the second question I'm often asked is, why now? Why did I decide now to run? A lot of these issues have been ongoing for years. And the answer is, my district went from being gerrymandered badly to a no-win district for Democrats to being a toss-up race. I was a plaintiff on the past 3 gerrymandering lawsuits we've had here in North Carolina. We won one last year that redrew this legislative district, made mine and Dan's and a few others more competitive. And this seat is now a toss-up race. When I am elected, I am going to fight for an independent, nonpartisan redistricting commission because voters should elect their representatives. Representatives shouldn't be picking their voters. We've got to hold candidates and elected officials accountable, and they need to represent the people. So that gives you a few of the issues that I want to fight for when I go to Raleigh. There are more affordable health care, an economy that works for everyone, not just the rich, not just corporations. But I don't want to take up all of our time. A lot of the other candidates have already covered a lot of the environmental issues, and I am right there with them. I'm passionate about protecting all of that. To learn more about my campaign, check out my website. It's quickfornc.com. And I hope for your support. I hope for your vote, and look forward to representing everybody in Raleigh. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. We really appreciate it, and we're pulling for you. So now I'm going to go back to Ken for some closing remarks. And if anybody has a question, put it in the Q&A, and we'll circle back around to it after Ken talks just a little bit. Is that good? Oh, I have a question.
Okay, let me go ahead and do the closing and we'll come back to the
Okay.
Go ahead and do the question. Go ahead and do the question.
Okay, well, this is from Gus. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Dan Bessie, for acknowledging that we have a climate crisis. What can all of you do to educate all the voters of North Carolina that this is a serious threat to their well-being? When that happens, you will be assured of re-election. So I'll just let you guys chime in if you want as to what you all can do to educate the voters.
Well, since Gus named me, I'll speak just briefly first. One of the things we have to do is tell people how the extreme weather that we're dealing with now is originating from climate change. The massive storm that accelerated quickly and slammed the Louisiana just this past week was not the way these kinds of storms used to occur. It swung into the Gulf of Mexico as a piddly little Category 1 hurricane, barely, and by the time it made landfall, it had accelerated in about a day's time to near a Category 5, the most destructive storm. And that is a new effect that we are beginning to see now of climate change. The sort of the massive downpours in our state that we've seen over time, followed by increasingly dry periods, that swing back and forth is a predictable impact of climate change. And we're seeing it harm our agriculture. Jenna, you can talk in depth about that. And it's making for worse flooding. We just have to explain how we're already seeing these impacts on our lives, and we can help bring people along to wanting to go with us and address the crisis.
I'll chime in real briefly just to say that I think that people do understand climate change, but they haven't really been given permission to acknowledge that. And once we have leadership in the General Assembly in Raleigh that is, giving people permission to say, yes, I'm worried about this, I'm afraid, and not rejecting the science and rejecting it out of hand for political purposes, I think you'll see a pretty quick change in public opinion around that issue. I also think the second thing that we can do is we can go out into some of these rural towns, small towns like where I grew up in Galax, Virginia, and we can talk to the leaders in those small towns about how we can, bring investment to their towns. I'm thinking about this really small town in Texas where they get 100% of their energy from wind. So we can have small projects in these local towns. And when people see that not only does clean energy bring them good paying jobs, and it also makes their environment cleaner, then you'll start to build some, I think, public support for acknowledging the dire threat of climate change across our state.
Deborah, I may jump in and make a few comments, and then we'll open it back up to others to make to answer that question as well. First of all, gosh, what a great group of candidates we've got here. I mean, I couldn't be more proud of those
Ken,
guys.
I don't think we can hear you.
Uh-oh,
Yeah, we can't hear you.
how about now? Still not?
Not much better. But
Okay, all right. Well, we'll let somebody else answer that question while I put some headphones on.
Jenna actually had she was ready. Jenna?
Yeah, I was gonna say, thank you. Especially in the last few years here in North Carolina. In particular, when I talk to the agricultural community, I let them know that economically, we can't afford not to address climate change. It will be too expensive not to address this, and that we have to act now. It just makes more sense to move into more sustainable ways and more just ways of doing things. It allows them to be more effective and efficient so they can ensure their long-term livelihood and well-being. They can ensure that the farm will still be there for the next generation. I am all about meeting people where they are and leading with your values, but you have to share and understand and find those common values that unite people. And a lot of folks, for them, it's their pocketbooks. Like, they understand, like, the issues that affect them at their kitchen table are ones that, when you talk about climate change, right? Like having clean drinking water, or when you cut on the tap at night and you use that water and you're going to boil it to make food for your family, you know it's safe. You feel good about it. Knowing that you have clean air to breathe so your family can continue to enjoy recreating or going on family vacations in all these beautiful spots throughout the state. Being able to have healthy, nutritious food. So I talk about that in terms of climate change too. Food insecurity is already such a huge issue in North Carolina. That's just going to grow worse as we experience more of these storm events, these unpredictable events. And when I talk to, in particular, Western North Carolina farmers, they really are, I mean, they understand, not just those apple orchard owners that are having problems getting insurance to be able to do what they love to do, but because of the temperature gradations that we're expected to see, in particular in Western North Carolina, it will absolutely upend a lot of the small farmers and the crops that they're looking at growing, because a few extra degrees each way will absolutely change their ability to be successful and continue doing what they've been doing for generations. So again, you've got to meet people where they are. You've got to lead with your values. And I think that you have to make that economic argument, whether it's talking about solar and renewable leases, whether it's talking about just the environmental destruction and the cost of that from these corporate factory farms and having to clean that up, the cost of the healthcare for the people that are experiencing environmental racism and environmental injustice because they're located next to these factory farms. You have to meet them with that economic cost. And I think that's what a lot of people understand, no matter what their party affiliation is.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in before I make a few remarks here?
I'll just tag on real quick. I agree with everything that has already been said, but I just make it personal when I talk with people. I mean, in my own little garden in my backyard, we've had rain every day for I don't know how long now. My tomatoes are cracking before they're ripe. If that's happening to me, what's happening to farmers? I have one of the farms in my district is Grove Vineyards. So as the temperature gets hotter and as we get more rain, they're not going to be able to grow wine grapes there. Those grapes are going to rot on the vine. So that is a real life issue that affects people in their pocketbooks, as Jenna was saying. I think people down at the coast are understanding it a little better. Your fishermen who are getting hit with these hurricanes and it's destroying their boats, their livelihood, the people who are losing homes as the storms come up and take them out and the coast erodes because of the storm surge. They recognize that something is happening and it's starting to make a difference to their pocketbooks. And we've just got to personalize that for people. And I think that they will be on board.
Thank you, Nicole.
I'll just briefly weigh in if I can, and apologize I didn't move inside when it got dark because it's story time in the living room, and if I walk in there, it's not going to end well for any of us. You know, I agree with everything that has been said, but one of the things I'll just add, I think people are also desperate for ideas. You know, if you look at the majority of folks, and you look at public opinion, people know climate change is real. They see it in their everyday lives. They see it when they turn on the news or open a newspaper or magazine. It's not this far-fetched concept anymore. You can't escape it. And so I think what people are desperate for is they're desperate for us as leaders to say, this is how we can tackle it. And if we work together and we do X, Y, and Z, it can be done. Because in a lot of instances, you have conversations with folks, especially young people. They think, you know, we've waited too long. There's nothing that can be done. So why bother? And I think it is up to us to bring forth policy ideas, build consensus, and tackle it, and make people believe that if we do work together, we can still address this issue. It's not too late. It might take more aggressive action than it would have if we did it 20 years ago, but it's still not too late. And we can't allow the negativity to overrun the conversation. At the end of the day, it all turns on hope and giving people an opportunity to believe that they in their own lives with certain small actions can make a difference. And when we work together as a community, as a state, and as a global community, we can tackle this.
Great. Well, wow, what a great group of candidates. You know, we've got to get these folks elected. They're just too good not to get elected this year. And Josh started out by saying this election is probably how critical it is. And we all know the presidential race, North Carolina is a battleground state, could be the pivotal state on determining our next president. We know we can't take back control of the U.S. Senate without electing Cal Cunningham. We know how important it is to keep Governor Cooper and Josh Stein, but we also know how important it is that we get a council of state that can support Governor Cooper. And that's why electing Jenna and Ronnie and all of our other great candidates for council of state are so important. The state Supreme Court, we have to think back to 2015 when the Republican majority agreed that the extreme gerrymandered districts in the state were okay and approved those. And we can't end up in a situation where we have 3 state Supreme Court judges as well as our 5 Court of Appeals judges. We've got to make sure we elect those people so we can make sure we've got a strong judiciary in this state that can continue to uphold the fact that extreme gerrymandering is unconstitutional. We can't take the chance of losing control of those. And certainly taking back the North Carolina Senate and the North Carolina House is absolutely critical. We've been playing defense for the last decade, but because of the redistricting, we've got the first real chance in a decade to elect a majority. And guess what? The candidates you've heard tonight for these seats in the North Carolina Senate and North Carolina House, if we win those seats, somebody said it earlier, that's critical to us taking back control. We probably can't take back control of those without winning these seats. So these are races that Sierra Club is going to be focused on. and making sure that we're putting it there. And in your financial support is critical to help in giving us the resources to help us make sure these folks are elected. They're all races we're prioritizing. In 2018, we prioritized all 6 of the state Senate seats and focused on those that we won. Same thing in the House, the 10 seats that we won there were seats that we focused on and put a majority of our resources in and made a difference, as well as the state Supreme Court seat. And this year we've identified, we think, 20 of the most competitive state House and Senate seats, as well as 9 of the statewide races that are our #1 priority, as well as the others. And we just mailed out yesterday a check for $2,000 from the PAC to all of our priority races. So you guys should be getting that check this week, but depending on the Postal Service, who knows? But anyway, it has been mailed out, and I spent last week interviewing organizers that can do digital organizing to help us reach out virtually to our 100,000 members and supporters and other people in this state that care about the environment. And we know young voters in particular, the environment's a key issue for them. And we know that getting young people to vote all the way down the ballot is going to be key to winning these races. Typical election, presidential election, 8% of people don't vote at the bottom of it. So we have got to make sure that people know who to vote for, that they don't go in and say, okay, I voted at the top of the ticket. I haven't heard of any of these people running for state House or state Senate. We need to make sure we get the word out. And the money that we're raising tonight will do it. And by the way, if you made one contribution, you can still go back in and make another contribution. We'll be happy to take more money. But also, we need your help to volunteer for these campaigns, to volunteer for the Sierra Club, to make sure we do it. So we've got to make this happen, and we've got to do it, and it's important that we make that happen. So with that, I will don't see any more questions in the Q&A. So I want to turn it back over to Deborah to thank our candidates and for all of you for attending. Deborah?
I guess it's good if you're not muted to do this. So I really want to thank everyone for attending tonight and for helping make this a very interesting and exciting event. And we're so thankful for all of our donors and our sponsors and everyone who's helping our candidates in North Carolina. So thank you so much. And I have nothing more.
Thank you, guys, all the candidates and everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
And as you can see, there's a place you can go there to donate by clicking on that, sc.org/NC PAC donate, and make an additional contribution. As my Baptist preacher used to say when I was a kid, give till it hurts and then give some more. And we've got to have that same fervor to get all our candidates elected. So thanks again, and thank you for joining us.
Bye. Oops.